allowed to be offshore and pay almost zero tax. You are going to be absolutely dominated with forced inoculations. Government, American Medical Association called for it last week. California shooting kids up without parental consent. It's happening. And they will start arresting people and saying, well, nobody really knows where Bill went. He was permanently detained, but we're sure he deserved it. And that's meant to be a big chilling effect with just rabid, just crazy-eyed goons running around everywhere on power trips. Hell is going to be released on this nation as we go into total depression and just every form of depravity you can imagine. And body scanners, face scanners everywhere, mobile trucks, total control, cancer rates, diabetes exploding, neurological disorders. People are going to be dying all around you. And the government's just going to act like everything's fine as they soft kill the population. It's totally sick. This is the New World Order. Ron Paul, crotch groped by TSA, calls for boycott of airlines. Remember that happened a few years ago. That's a flashback. Here's the Daily Mail. It was also in the New York Daily News. In fact, we'll put that one on screen. Put in TSA apologizes to grandmothers, New York Daily News, because that's even in New York. But here it is, Daily Mail. TSA apologizes for strip searching two grandmothers at JFK. See, they went ahead and started lawsuits and FOIA request and were subpoenaing stuff. So they said, you know what? We did take 85 and 89-year-old women, Ruth Sherman and Lenora Zimmerman, into back rooms. We did take your clothes off, but we don't call it a strip search. Remember, they said John Hopkins says there's no radiation from these. The actual John Hopkins report said it is radiation and does cause cancer. This is how they operate. This is what they do. This is how they deceive. Remember 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago? Remember? Every time they get caught and there's video of them groping a 2-year-old kid or whatever, or taking their pants off or taking a 3-year-old shirt off, and everybody's like, why? Why? And there's some weird perv rubbing all over their skin. They take the little kid's shirt and pants off in front of everybody and are rubbing all over them. People are like, why? It's so obviously ridiculous. It's so obviously perverted. It's so obviously pedophile training. It's so obviously training kids that perverts can do this to them. The TSA comes out and says, we don't strip search people under 12. We never have. And then later they go, oh, you're right, we are. We're going to stop now. Oh, you're right, we're going to stop now. It's all lying to you because they see you as their enemy. It's an occupying force. To drive a car, to have a job, to live your life, you'll have to have their approval. They're over the threat fusion centers. They're over your police. They're over everything. And already, at a bus station, train stations, and now on the highways, you pull up or you walk in, and here they are with their hands. I mean, I've got it in Florida, man, pulling people's clothes off in lines. It's like going into gas chamber showers or something. I mean, it's just total evil. This is what the terrorists have done to us, the people that staged 9/11, so they could turn you into a prisoner. Again, it's not like any of this is my opinion. There are federal forces publicly, illegally federalizing all our local police. They have got them hyped up and trained that we are the enemy. And all over the nation, starting with the airports and fanning out, they are out there basically sexually assaulting the American people. And it doesn't matter how many state reps get groped with their children and introduce legislation in Texas. It doesn't matter how many Congress people get groped and harassed. It doesn't matter. It's about the banking class that has hijacked this nation and controls the security forces, having total control over society. Remember a couple of years ago, there was a backfire in the parking garage of the Capitol building in D.C., and they ordered all the House and Senate members to leave, and some of the senators weren't walking fast enough and were actually thrown down on the ground and grabbed on by the security forces in their black uniforms with MP5 submachine guns. Always, that's the threat in society. In Rome 2,000 years ago, in Venezuela today, in Nigeria, Africa, in the United States. There it is right there. And the type of people they're hiring for those positions now. Just a bunch of wanton thugs who sit around fantasizing, watching all these cop shows where they torture and kill people and are always right. The government is paid off with $500 billion of drug money. A tiny amount of that is used to buy them. The majority is laundered through large globalist banks. And it's all public, and no one gets in trouble. And you tell cops that the government deals the drugs. They go, well, everybody knows that, but still, I'm just doing my job. Doing your job, keeping the prices up of the drugs, train everybody to be a good slave. Your phony drug war, keep prices up. Your phony drug war to pack the 4+ million people in private prisons working for 25 cents an hour, driving down everybody else's wages. If I see one more good old boy on unemployment going, I think it's good they're putting prisoners in jail for nonviolent drug offenses, and they ought to make them work. They got hot tubs and cable TV. No, they don't. Last time I checked, prisons in Texas are phasing out air conditioning. Oh, that's a really good idea in the summer when it's 115 degrees inside without air conditioning. You like 4 million people in prison at any one time working to drive down your wages and take your job? Are you stupid? And see, my problem is I get in here and I read this news and I look at it and I get so angry because I know it's just going to get worse and worse. You know, folks, I told you more than 13 years ago that the big mega banks, and I listed the 6 mega banks, would implode the world economy within the next 15 years through derivatives and would announce a Bank of the World as the solution that we would pay carbon taxes to. Exactly that's now happened. I told you they'd start making announcements about government developing weaponized airborne flus, mousepox, Ebola, just so they can plausibly deny involvement when it gets released and claim it was an accident. They're now making the announcements about all these airborne weapons they're so concerned about, which means they're edging towards using them. I told you they'd pass laws to secretly arrest citizens and disappear us ahead of staging massive domestic terror attacks. You know, I told you 9/11 was going to happen and they were going to blow up the World Trade Centers and blame it on their asset bin Laden. And then on September 11th, I said that undoubtedly in the next month, you're going to see a bio attack in the U.S., but a small one just to prep that fear for the future. Now, how did I know that? A lot of data goes into it. I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of famous criminology cases where a detective's been tracking a serial killer for a decade, eating, sleeping, drinking it, and they end up staking out certain spots on maps they've created, and dead reckoning actually end up being there when the serial killer dumps another body. I don't know how to. It's all the data, it's all the research, but I know what they're going to do, and I guess in a sick way, that's kind of the good part about it. Because if we don't turn this around, all of you that have served the system are going to be killed by it. And no, I'm not talking about World War III that could kick off with Iran. I'll have the latest on that when we get back. But Rand Paul, you know, he doesn't want somebody grabbing his genitals, so he's evil. I mean, I guess the new American flag should be a man having his genitals grabbed. I'm sorry, but that's what America is now. Land of the perverts.
We're on the march. The empire's on the...
You know, yesterday I talked about a little Google search I did, and that concerned Defense Department, live experiment, Disney. And if you search those terms, you will find that Disney World with the Department of Defense since 1996, and they're proud of this. They have press releases on it. Their parks and facilities in Disney USA are lifetime laboratories tracking human behavior and are the model of the future smart cities where everywhere you go, you'll be face scanned and thumbprinted to buy and sell. That model of having a park that's like a prison. You go through security to get in, you go through security to get out, is the model in Fallujah and Iraq and Afghanistan, and is now the model in the United States. But see, you pay to get in. It's so special to get queued up in the big herd lines. And so that's why Disney World is the beta testing ground for the latest on FEMA camp behavioral psychology and mass controlling of populations, and people pay to go be part of it. I told the story on the radio last night. I was over at my parents yesterday afternoon, and I was talking about Disney World. And I said, well, you know the whole thing's a laboratory. I said, the shopping malls are now. Mall of America's hooked in with Department of Defense. That's now been confirmed. We had sources months ago telling us about it. And I said, all of these wars, everything is a laboratory. They call it a laboratory. They call Iraq and Afghanistan laboratories. They call the United States a laboratory. Everything is a laboratory by the scientific technocratic elite to slowly test and gauge and develop systems. That's why they call it the scientific dictatorship. And I just said, watch this. I said, I'm going to use my little New World Order data tracker phone, and I'm going to type into the NSA search engine that's actually there to track what I'm thinking about, what I'm looking into. See, you think it's just one way. You're just getting info from Google and it's showing you some advertising. No, that's only one small part of it. But I said, watch this. I'm going to type in Disney World, Department of Defense, Disney World Laboratory. And it was just white papers, documents, press releases, hundreds of them. And I'd never even seen that information. I just knew it would be because it's all Department of Defense. Eisenhower said we have a technological ruling elite that's taken over, and they control the military-industrial complex. Now, the media will never play, I've played it, the full speech where he says a technocratic elite is now in control of 90% of all research at universities. We are in a scientific dictatorship. He basically goes on to warn everybody. And somebody drops a book or something. You hear a slam in the background. He acts totally scared, like he thinks somebody's about to kill him. And he definitely went off script for that. That was admitted. They had cue cards for him, and he went off script in his farewell address because he had somewhat of a conscience. We now know the Joint Chiefs of Staff had just approached him to stage terror attacks in the U.S., start war with the Soviets. He said no. That they'd recently come to him with a eugenics plan about the sodium fluoride in the water and to reduce population. He discovered the cancer viruses and the vaccines. Kennedy, of course, was later briefed on all this and kind of flipped out. Because back then, you know, they were from an older world. They'd actually been in combat in World War I and World War II. Kennedy, World War II, Eisenhower, tank commander, highly decorated World War I guess in the same unit as MacArthur. But side issue, all of that happening, and they're going, it's a scientific dictatorship. We're going to jack the food and the water and dumb them down, and this is horrible. But see, that's what runs America now. And it's like walking around with people in a trance, and they physically are close to being in a trance. And to see people going about their business like everything's normal, and they have no idea that an artificial environment is being constructed and is being set up in our society. Now, let me get into the news. Since we have started with the whole TSA thing, let me finish up with it. Here's New York Daily News, Daily Mail, you name it. Sorry about that. TSA apologizes for strip searching two grandmothers at JFK. Guys, type in for everybody watching or listening.